And hello, welcome to Story Hour with Miss Barbara. This past weekend, there have been 3 deaths in my circle of influence, which is like the whole year's quota in one weekend. So I would like to dedicate this presentation to these 3 individuals. One is my grandnephew, who died as a 10-month-old, just a wee little one. And another one is a longtime member of our congregation. And then the third one was the son of my friend Linda. So I'd like to dedicate this to baby Liam, aged Ken, and cut down in the prime of his life, Ryan. The tide rises, the tide falls. The twilight darkens, the curlew calls. Along the sea sands, damp and brown, the traveler hastens toward the town. And the tide rises, the tide falls. Darkness settles on roofs and walls, but the sea, in the darkness calls. The little waves with their soft white hands efface the footprints in the sands. And the tide rises, the tide falls. Morning breaks, the steeds in their stalls stamp and neigh as the hostler calls. Day returns, but nevermore returns the traveler to the shore. And the tide rises, the tide falls. And who by fire, who by water, who in the sunshine, who in the nighttime, who by high ordeal, who by common trial, who in your merry, merry month of May, who by very slow decay, and who shall I say is calling, and who in her lonely slip, who by barbiturate, who in these realms of love, who by something blunt, who by avalanche, who by powder, who for his greed, who for his hunger, and who shall I say is calling, and who by brave ascent, who by accident, who in solitude, who in this mirror, who by his lady's command, who by his own hand, who in mortal chains, who in power, and who shall I say is calling? Wow. 2 poems that are haunting and evoke something in you, a pull toward the unknown, the unfamiliar hiding in the familiar. In Henry Wadsworth Longfellow's poem, the familiar is found in nature and in human structure. In Leonard Cohen's, a poem set to music, the familiar is found in all the different ways that people die, both in nature and by human design. What is common in both is the call. You know, the call. I think of my mother calling my brother in for supper. She'd stand at the door. Where are you, Mark? You know how mothers call in a sing-song tone, dinner time. Or, as in Cohen's case, the call could be a knock at the door. Or as one listener saw it, the ring of a telephone, where we have that familiar response. And who shall I say is calling? In Longfellow's poem, the sea is calling. And the curlew, a shorebird with a long beak and a plaintive call. And the hostler of the horses. For both poems, the one doing the calling is death. The difference is in how each poet views death, and that determines the mood of each poem. Longfellow's poem, I feel, has a mood of sadness, but also beauty and order in the rhythm and inevitability. Cohen's poem also has a strong element of inevitability, but it also shows death as a great equalizer. This is especially seen in the pairing of the last two deaths. The one who put the prisoner in chains dies, as well as the prisoner. Both are equally helpless against their visitor. I think the difference could be attributed, or much of it, to the different times in which they were written. Longfellow's poem was written in the 1800s, whereas Cohen, who died only 8 years ago, addresses more of a modern audience. He uses the power of questioning. Someone or something is calling each one of us. And who or what exactly is that? This open question leaves room for wonder. Let's look at each poem and its author. First, Longfellow's. Henry Wadsworth Longfellow was popular in his own day, but now he is mostly remembered by school children for the rhythmic poem, The Song of Hiawatha, and The Midnight Ride of Paul Revere. But this poem, The Tide Rises, The Tide Falls, seems to appeal to more modern listeners, maybe because there's no moralizing. He lets the poem speak for itself. And what does it say? I think a big part of the message can be seen in the title, the opening line, and the closing line of each stanza. The tide rises, the tide falls. This speaks to the rhythm, the 25-hour rhythm of the tides, which is ruled by the moon, and also the 24-hour rhythm of day and night. And you can see this as it opens with night coming on, twilight darkens, and ends with the morning, interestingly enough, and the morning breaks. There is a third rhythm that's only suggested, but it's the rhythm of the heart. Or, as Dylan Thomas puts it in his poem, The waters of the heart push in their tides. Yes, just as the ocean rises and falls in a perfect rhythm, so does the chest rise and fall. And this becomes a very important element of the poem, of the poem's storyline. So let's look at the storyline. There's a traveler. He's hastening toward the town. He sees the twilight darken. He hears the curlew call, and you get the sense that he's trying to get to the town before nightfall, before the dark comes. But, and this is a big one, an ominous important, the sea, and that repetition of that word is so evocative. In the darkness, calls. The sea calls him back. He doesn't make it safely. He doesn't stay in the town. And then the tide rises, the tide falls. His last breath. And also, in the next stanza, the morning breaks and the daily rhythm goes on without him. And the tide rises and the tide falls. The ocean's rhythm goes on without him. And there's the sadness. But there's also beauty. You have to dig a little for it. But in pondering this poem, I noticed the little hands, the soft white hands of the little waves that efface the footprints on the shore. Anyone who has walked along the shore behind another person has seen those little foaming waves come and wash away the footprints of the person just ahead of them. So and it's only the little waves that make it onto the shore. The large waves crash and disappear in the surf. So what do the little waves or the little hands, if you put the two together, of the soft white hands, call to your mind? For me, I think of children. And the word white suggests angels. So cherubim are erasing the footprints, calling the traveler home. And I know of at least 2 instances where angels have been present at deathbeds. Then there's the hostler with a capital H. Who is he? I think of those horses stamping and neighing in their stalls for food or to be led out to pasture. These horses were work horses. They were used in transportation in those days, but I imagine they were led out to pasture in the morning, a cheaper form of food for the hostler. You see where I'm going with this? Being led out to pasture in the morning, the greener pasture of heaven. There's the beauty that I saw in the poem. Now, Cohen's song is a bit more complex. He bases his lines on a ritual, a Jewish ritual for Yom Kippur, or the Day of Atonement. And the rabbi calls out these lines, who by fire, who by water, as he looks at the year ahead and how many of them might not make it through the year and therefore need to take this atonement seriously. Well, Cohen uses those words, but he brings his own words into it to provide the meaning for what he wants to say. And so let's look at who these people are that receive this call of death. In the first stanza, it's definitely Joan of Arc and other martyrs for their faith. Joan of Arc's high ordeal after a common trial to be burned at the stake by fire in the merry, merry month of May on May 30th, 1431. Now, Cohen has an earlier song where in which she has a conversation with fire, her form of death, as her lover, to whom she surrenders her pride. I like your solitude, says death. Who in solitude, who in this mirror, sings Cohen. The very slow decay could be happening in a dungeon cell or just signifying old age. Cohen himself died at age 72. So basically, some die young, some die old, but all receive the call. The thing that makes Cohen's vagueness in the song so compelling to me is that this call to something somewhere else comes all life long. I think it's the call to transcendence. Now, this is a hymn that I think Longfellow would appreciate. I'm not so sure about Leonard Cohen, but it's the two poems. See what you think. Son of my soul, thou Savior dear, it is not night if all be near. Oh, may no earth-bound cloud arise to hide thee from thy servant's eyes, when the soft dews of kindly sleep my weary eyelids gently steep. Be my last thought, how sweet to rest forever on my Savior's breast. Abide with me from morn till eve, for without thee I cannot live. Abide with me when night is nigh, for without thee I dare not die. Come near and bless us when we wake, ere through the world our way we take, till in the ocean of thy love we lose ourselves in heaven above. By the way, here's the curlew. If you're still here, just remember, God has your back. Thanks for listening.